He co-founded the Surgery Center of Oklahoma in May of 1997. He is president of IMPAC, a political watchdog group in Oklahoma. Dr. Smith is going to be talking to us about health insurance. He's going to be talking to us about his managed care and Medicare-free ambulatory center. Dr. Smith.
Good morning. I'm here to say thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm honored to be here. As I go through this presentation and this talk, it's one I've never given before. My surgery center has been open now for 11 years, and I've never spoken of it outside of the confines of our surgery center. I've never presented it to this organization or any other. You'll see the principles and the foundation of AAPS in this presentation, I think. Some of it from conversations I've had with some of you over the years, things that I've read in the newsletter, and you'll see that as we march along. And for whatever contribution you've made in the past, AAPS is a huge part of this facility, and I hope you see that as we go along. There's some talk about the Constitution this morning and about Charles Key at the House of Representatives at Oklahoma presenting his recommitment to the 10th Amendment in the state. I think about Joe Sobrand's comment when the Iraqis needed a new Constitution. He said, well, let them have ours. We're not using it. Well, that was... And Catherine and Mike were talking to about the Democrats and the Republicans. None of them are our friends. And somebody wrote last week that we have the stupid party and we have the evil party. And sometimes they get together and they do something stupid and evil, and we call that bipartisanship. So. There are a lot of things I thought about and how to name this talk, and it's difficult because there's so much material. But it could be called this. It could be called Ideas Have Consequences. It could be called Physician Own Your Own Practice. I've thought of all various names. That's the front of my surgery center. It's founded in 1997. We've received not 1 cent in Medicare and Medicaid funds since inception. Thank you. We've never had, ever, an HMO contract. We've never relinquished confidential patient medical records to anyone, ever. And we've never filed an electronic insurance claim. It's all paper. And if you don't see the influence of AAPS yet, then you haven't been here for very long. I'll present more about the surgery center as we go along, and at the end, I think I'll identify an enemy that maybe has not been talked about with a pretty soft underbelly that I think may be a good target for AAPS in the future. And I think I'll finish with that. Just in case you don't think AAPS has contributed, well, let's keep going. I've successfully sued the Oklahoma State Department of Health. I've won 2 numerous to count legislative battles at the State House in Oklahoma. Provided care to countless uninsured. We don't cost shift because we don't take trashy payment from Medicare, Medicaid, or HMO, so we have what I call honesty in pricing. And it allows our prices to be so low that the uninsured can easily pay cash for almost anything that we do. We've begun Canada Care, and that's not really what it's called, but I've put it up there just sort of we have Canadian patients coming to Oklahoma City to have surgical procedures because of our pricing structure. We work with several deafness foundations, Operation for Cochlear Implantation. I'll go ahead and talk about that now. The Huff Ear Institute is a large group of otologists in Oklahoma City, one of the largest anywhere in the country. And you're an otologist, I think. Is that right? And Dr. Huff's kind of a famous guy, but they do a lot of cochlear implants, and they're affiliated with a large hospital there called Baptist Integris Hospital. The implant itself costs about $27,000. The first thing the hospital does is triple the price, so that they charge $81,000 for the implant, and then they'll charge another $20,000 or $30,000 for the experience in the hospital, which is usually just a stay overnight for a very small child, a year old, not usually less than a year old, but within a year or two of age. A lot of these families don't have the money, so these charitable foundations provide the funds to pay for this. Well, at my facility, I don't know why we should profit from having a rep come in and open up a cochlear implant on the back sterile table. I don't know why I should triple the price for that experience. So we lateral the implant. We don't charge anything more for the implant than what it costs. And then it's $2,500 for the experience. That's it. Occasionally, I'll give the anesthetic for nothing. And the surgeon's fees are very reasonable. So at our facility, these deafness foundations can have 3 children treated for the price of 1 at the big hospital across town. So we've become very popular with these deafness foundations. We have forced some cost transparency in town by virtue of the Deafness Foundation business and some other things. When we quote prices, and we say this is what it is, and everybody else in town is feeling some pressure and feeling some cost pressure, and it's forcing the prices of surgical care down in Oklahoma City. You can imagine how many friends I have at the big hospitals. And we've changed the service paradigm. The physicians that I work with were so poorly treated at the hospitals where they did surgery. That was part of my mission when my partner, Dr. Stephen Lonte, and I opened this place, was to provide great service to the surgeons, knowing that if they were happy, they would bring their patients. And we took our relationship with the patients seriously, but we also knew that if we provided great service to the surgeons, everybody was going to be happy. And it's changed the way surgeons are given service in Oklahoma City. We've seen all of our competitors struggle to try to match what we've done, and they can't do it, but they're struggling. Enough about the surgery center. We'll come back to that. I didn't really opt out of Medicare. I quit. I just quit. I tried privately contracting with patients. I met Dr. Lois Copeland and Dr. Michael Schlitt in this organization many years ago, had many conversations with them, exchanged lots of correspondence with them, tried very, very hard, had the support of every surgeon that I worked with that said, we want you to do our anesthetics, you go ahead and make whatever arrangement with the patients that you want. And it didn't work. I mean, it just made the patients mad at the surgeons because the surgeon, they'd say, why did you pick this guy, that my insurance won't pay. So I did them free of charge. I just did Medicare patients gratis. Didn't file a claim, just did them. And they really made it pretty easy for me because the last payment I received for anesthetic for a total knee arthroplasty was $78. I basically came to Oklahoma City to do cardiac anesthesia and was very busy. Probably 60% of my practice was cardiac anesthesia, traveling around all the different hospitals. And the last cardiac anesthetic that I did was a 6-hour case, multiple attempts to get off of bypass, was successful, $292 for Medicare. So it wasn't like I took a lot of risk by quitting because there just wasn't enough money in it. I mean, but I quit, and I just thought I'd rather do them for nothing. And this is the letter that I received, and I've been told by several of you over the years that this is fairly unique, and that's why I'm showing it. Has anybody else ever gotten a letter like this? Okay, I'll read it. It says, your provider identification number is being deactivated. And that's my Social Security number, so nobody steal my identity. Our records show that this PIN was established over 1 year ago and that there are no claims on file for this PIN with a date of service within the last 18 months. and it's dated March 5th, 97. By taking this action, we are attempting to prevent unauthorized usage and safeguard the integrity of all our records. If you feel this pen should remain active, please send a letter, blah, blah, blah. This letter must contain the current date of your original, blah, blah, blah. Sincerely, somebody in McCollum. So I was decommissioned. And according to them, I guess I don't exist. And several people here in the past have asked me, how do I get this letter? You know, how can I get this letter? And I really don't know. They just sent me one. But I've been told many times that nobody else has ever gotten this letter. It's under glass in my study. I stopped taking Medicare for a lot of reasons. Part of it was philosophical. Unfortunately for Medicare, I was reading Atlas Shrugged and had joined AAPS not long before, and that helped too. You know, they weren't paying me, and I was becoming a radical. And the guy in the middle is Lew Rockwell, and he writes beautifully, but he pointed me to Rothbard and Mises and Bastiat and all the things that really helped me understand where does the government get its money. And the government, of course, doesn't have any money that it didn't first take from us at the point of a gun. So they don't really have any money. And recently I began to understand that they don't even spend what they take from us. They just print it. And that's a whole nother topic. But those are two of my boys with Lew Rockwell last year. I love Bastiat's definition of government. I don't know if y'all have ever seen this. It's a great fiction through which everybody endeavors to live at the expense of everybody else. He wrote that in the early 1800s in France. When RVS first happened, it was affectionately referred to as a rape because initially the targets were radiologists, anesthesiologists, pathologists, and emergency room physicians, or APE. They thought the hospital-based physicians would be the easiest to overcome, and then they pretty much rolled everybody else. This is the other reason I stopped taking money from Medicare. I just got tired of getting these letters telling me year to year or month to month, this is what your maximum allowable charge is going to be, and this is what you're going to be allowed to make. And that's disquieting. It made me a bit insecure. I didn't want to know that somebody off in the distance was going to make the decision about what I was going to make. And so I just decided I wasn't going to take it anymore. And I've often joked that Medicare is the only insurance company that has its own F-16s and tanks. And that's not a coincidence. And I was aware that not only as a physician, if I made an error in filing a claim, that was considered criminal. But as a facility owner, the consequences are much more severe. And that's one of the main reasons we did not take any federal funds in our facility. Fear. This is the only way a Medicare beneficiary will get past my receptionist. That's actually my mother, and I was training her how to get past the receptionist in a doctor's office so that she can get care. When the managed care revolution hit in 1990, mid-90s, I do not believe that it was coincidental about the timing. Medicare crushed us with RVS, and managed care came on the scene. These pathetic contracts looked pretty good compared to what Medicare was paying. I do not believe it was coincidental, and I believe that large corporate hospitals were complicitous. Remember the hospital administrator complaining to you that we're not getting paid either. You know, you guys have taken a cut, but oh, we've just taken severe cuts. We're not making any money. What happened was the way they were paid changed. They did not receive as much up front, but they received car dealer-like rebates at the end of the year, and they got rich. You remember the physician hospital organizations that they all wanted us to join so that they could contract more effectively with these insurance companies, all the while being complicitous with them, trying to crush their competitors and form as best a monopoly as they could. My partner and I got tired. We got tired of working in a hospital where they used this excuse of we're not being paid for any of this stuff to cut nursing staff, to cut supplies in the operating room, to provide pathetic care post-operatively. And we thought we can either complain about this the rest of our careers or we can do something about it. So in 1997, Dr. Steve Lonte and I both walked away from very, very successful anesthesia practices, and we walked away. We bought a burnout, old, unused surgery center on a hunting trip. Seriously. And we opened this place, and this is now where we work. It's been a wild success and is in its 11th year of operation. Thank you. It's a little over 40,000 square feet, 9 operating rooms, 52 employees, 40 surgeons, 500 to 700 patients a month. It's completely owned and controlled by the people who work there. And I just put this slide up again just in case some of this stuff needed to be, just to remind me in case I needed to talk any more about. We started in 97. Like I said, we've never taken any government money. There are a lot of reasons for that. Once federal money enters a facility like this, everything changes. The way the money is distributed, all the rules, you have to deal with the STAR clause. If you don't take federal money, STAR doesn't even apply. So it just made a lot of sense to do it this way. The surgeons do their Medicare and Medicaid patients somewhere else. They go to other hospitals, and of course the hospitals are making a fortune doing Medicare and Medicaid, so they're happy to have the business. I sued the Oklahoma State Health Department in 2002. There was a law that they were trying to pass in Oklahoma. We referred to it as the 30% law. The legislature wanted to mandate that 30% of our net revenue came from Medicare, Medicaid, or what they call uncompensated care. And I might even abbreviate that later as UC. If you see that, that's what I mean. They couldn't enforce this without knowing every single thing about every single patient that came to every single facility. So the health department marched around and took everyone's medical records for the year 2000. All of them. Most people had succumbed to this HIT crap and had put all their stuff on a disk, and they had digitalized all of their medical records so that it was very simple to just hand over a CD or 2 or 3 to the Nazi from the health department. Thanks to apps, I did not take that bait, and we still have paper medical records. I mean, if they want to come through them, they can come through them. I said no. They said, then we will close you, and I said, and I will see you in court. And they surrendered. It turned out they did not have the statutory authority to collect this information after all, and the people who did give them that information have got a problem because they did it without any authority mandating them to do it. So thousands, tens of thousands of patients' confidential medical records were turned over without any reason for doing it. This 30% law, we beat that. We beat certificate of need. Every time something comes up, it's really amazing what I mean, I've got a few guys that are with me, but we are a very small, very anarcho-capitalist, libertarian bunch of really dedicated people that have made all of these horrible things go away. And so it's a bit of a tribute to our dedication, but it's also a small version of what APS does. I mean, just a small group of very, very dedicated, principled people can make a huge difference. And it's not easy to poison pill a lot of this stuff. It's just not, I mean, it's not hard. It's not hard to destroy the stuff that has no merit. Canada Care. I saw an article by a guy named Rick Baker, who runs a company in Canada called Timely Medical Alternatives, the sole purpose for which is a brokerage for people that are sick and tired of waiting in line for their total hip or their hernia or their whatever. So I called him and I said, you're arranging these surgeries in Seattle and Detroit, and you've printed these prices on here and they're too high. I said, we can do a rotator cuff repair for $3,900. And that includes the surgeon, the anesthesia, and the facility. He said, you're kidding me. I said, no, sit him down. So I've got a relationship with this guy in Canada. That's all he does. He has sent dozens of people for total joint replacement to the physician-owned hospital, which is right next door to me, and as you can imagine, was inspired by our decision to build. And they are doing the same thing for about a fifth of what they're paying up on the northern edge. They're coming all the way to Oklahoma City and having total knees and total hips done. The reason is the physicians completely own and control these facilities, and we control pricing, we control everything, and there's not a guy in a $2,000 suit needing to get paid a fortune that's part of the mix. She's still trying to get in my clinic, I think. If you have somebody that's not a physician that is running these facilities, they will follow these 3 rules. I've referred to them as the rules of the MBA, but they're really healthcare exec rules. People that run surgery centers that are not physicians, people that run physician hospitals that are not physicians, these are the 3 rules that they follow. They sever the connection between their success and that of the business. As Guido Hulsmann at the von Mises Institute would say, by separating ownership and control, you entertain moral hazard. And that is, they have control but no ownership. They're not rowing in the same canoe that you are, and so they entertain moral hazard. They pay themselves first, and then over time they manufacture their own indispensability by making the facility's organizational structure so complex that no one could possibly understand it without their assistance. And we're back to these guys. Hospitals cost shift. They charge a lot of money because they claim to lose money on Medicare and Medicaid. They crush the uninsured. We love the uninsured. My only rule with them is they got to pay for it when they show up. We love them and they love us, and we take care of a lot of folks that are uninsured. The way nonprofit hospitals, which are the enemy that I mentioned in the beginning, that I think APS may need to really take serious look at, they're like reverse Enrons. They want to overstate their losses and understate their earnings. They're making so much money that they have to overstate their losses to maintain the fiction that they're not for profit. They also want to generate this giant number at the end of the year that is this uncompensated care number to get their end of the year car dealer like rebate at the end. So when that poor guy who has no insurance is in a car wreck, and you wonder, why did they do an MRI and a CT and all of this lab work? And I mean, why did they do all this stuff? It's because they want to generate those losses. They have to show that red because it helps them maintain the fiction that they're not making millions somewhere else in the institution, and it also gives them more leverage at the end of the year to apply for these big car dealer-like rebates. The Wall Street Journal is onto them, and so is Forbes magazine, and they're one of the primary reasons that I think healthcare is so expensive. The other thing that they do, that big hospitals do, is they very aggressively buy physician practices. And then they form these networks. And then they go to Aetna and Cigna and Blue Cross and they say, we have this network. This is what we want, Blue Cross. This is what we want you to do. You pay us at this rate. You really hurt our competitors. And then we will allow you access to our network physicians. And that's the game. That's the collusion and the game that's going on right now. Andrew Cuomo in the state of New York has filed suit against a company called Isgenix. The counterpart of that is an outfit in Oklahoma called Integris for paying excessively low out-of-network payments to people who will not play their game. And we're hoping that our Attorney General, Drew Edmondson, in his quest for governor, will take it on. I think that's why Cuomo's doing it. I think he's trying to be governor. These are real warriors. These are true warriors. And I think about the principle and the dedication that Jane and Andrew have shown all through the years. We try to emulate that in Oklahoma City at our facility. And I hope that you've seen AAPS is a very vital part of our organization. I would encourage any of you that have even entertained the idea of owning some part or all or starting a facility to pursue it. It is the ultimate way to secede from this mess and to protect your patients from that fascist corporate influence that not just the government, but also that corporatist approach to healthcare. And I promise you, if you do that, then you'll live happily ever after like I will with her. Thank you. Sure.
We got time for a few questions if someone has any questions for Keith here.
Yes.
Yeah, enjoyed your talk very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could you expand a bit more on your comments regarding the nonprofit hospitals hiring physicians and then going to the insurance companies and having some type of deal or something? You just mentioned it at the end here.
I didn't really fully, and I don't fully understand all of the mechanics of the deal, but I wasn't even aware of this deal until I became an owner and ran a facility and saw it didn't make sense. Why would Aetna, why would Blue Cross want to have their patients at this giant hospital that was charging 5, 6, 10 times what we were? It didn't make sense. Quality-wise, no one can touch us in Oklahoma City. We have basically a 0 infection rate. I mean, any parameter you want to use, nobody can touch us, and we're cheaper. It just didn't make sense. An insurance friend of mine gave me a clue, but I could tell he felt badly for kind of letting me know what the real deal was. But ultimately, these large nonprofit hospitals buy physician practices, and then they claim that Dr. X, who previously was a guy in town with a great reputation and a great practice, is now a Isgenics doctor, he's a Novamed doctor, he's an Integris doctor, whatever. He's part of our network, and they'll put him in the newspaper, and there he is, and he's part of Integris, and it gives them that deal. Then they'll go to Blue Cross, and they'll say, okay, here is our network of physicians. Let's work together. You will pay us at this rate, and we will give you access to our network of physicians. And they've metastasized all over the state. So they're attempting, and they're not the only network, I just use them as an example. They're attempting to gain control of patients all over the state. And then they go and leverage the insurance company. And I don't mean to make an insurance company sound like a victim, but the nonprofit hospitals are leaning on them. It's a very non-win-win kind of deal. So the deal is you will pay us at this rate, and oh, and by the way, you will pay our competitors at this other rate, which is just untenable. And that's the game. And
the attorney generals are looking at this now, you said?
Andrew Cuomo in New York is basing his bid for run for governor on the fact that a company called Isgenics has done just this. And he's encouraged other attorney generals in all of the states to pursue this. And what they do, you have these out-of-network rates, and you have all these out-of-network deductibles and separate penalties and all that stuff. He's basically telling everybody, there's nothing in the policy that empowers the insurer to pay, this horribly low rate. So.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I was just going to say that old rule, the first aspect of a successful business is to eliminate the middlemen completely, and this is doing that.
There are none.
There are no middlemen, so they've been eliminated completely. But there's an old Middle Age rule from the Middle Ages where they had, again, separate cemeteries, as we were discussing this morning, for the middlemen, because they were considered to be bad people, and the usurers. And possibly we could start at the next meeting next year buying up all plots of land from here to New York City for all of the HMOs, all of the middlemen, and all of the Federal Reserve people and the usurers in our system.
Well, then don't get me wrong. I have accountants. I have lawyers. I have more lawyer friends than I think I have physician friends. There are a lot of lawyers out there that are very sympathetic to our loss of civil liberties and the insurance companies and what they do. I've grown fond of people that are in search of this real free atmosphere that we could and can live in. And when you walk in the doors of this facility, it's different. It's different. It's like you're in another world.
It's got a different atmosphere about it.
It does. But I have CPAs and I have lawyers and I have people that I consult all the time. But they do it in an ad hoc basis, and I listen to their advice. I don't always take it, but I have a lot of people that help us, but they are not part of the organizational structure.
Okay. Thank you. That was a good presentation.
Hello. Fantastic. Admire you.
Thank you.
I want to ask a few questions, though. In New York, we have a certificate of need requirement, and we have several doctors groups that are very sick and tired of the hospitals. So they want to set up a surgery center. The only one available is with one of the hospitals. Okay, from your opinion, does it make sense if they would have a majority ownership to get in bed with the devil?
In a word, no. To paraphrase Ayn Rand, if you have a pure vat of 5 gallons of the purest drinking water, and you add a thimbleful of feces to it, would you drink it? And the extent to which the hospitals are involved or present represents what's in the thimble. That their mission is not your mission. Your mission is about your patient. Their mission is the most mercenary, evil one you can imagine.
But does it depend on your alternatives? Because the alternative is staying in the vat.
what I would recommend is you leverage one hospital by working at another, all the while that you're fighting the certificate of need. CON has come to Oklahoma many times, and we've beaten it back with just obvious reasoned arguments. But best of luck to you. There are some states that are absolutely brutal, and New York is one of them. I think Washington State is another that is just horrendous.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
A question about your organizational structure.
Yes, sir.
As I understood it, you said you had 50 employees and 20 surgeons or something roughly
40
like that.
surgeons and 52 employees.
What do you mean by surgeons? Are these independent surgeons working in your institution? Are
Yes.
they employed by the institution?
No. Oh, good Lord, no.
Well, I didn't quite figure
Absolutely
that. I wanted to clarify
independent private practitioners. They are there by invitation only. We have probably 2 surgeons that apply for privileges a month that I refuse because they don't meet my 3 criteria. They have to be reputable, good surgeons, I mean really fine surgeons in the community to start with. They have to be nice people, because if they're not, they run off great staff that over the years I've worked very hard to hire. They're like family. The third thing is they can't be stupid. They have to carry their own weight. And a lot of surgeons will come in with a hospital mentality and just want everything in the world. And you all know, I mean, there are people that can have a beautiful result with whatever you give them. I mean, people that are just naturally inclined. And then there's some guys that are fastidious. That's the word I use for them. I mean, without every last tool, they can't exist. So the surgeons are there by invitation only. And when they come on a probationary period. And if they don't cut it, we let them go.
By letting them go, what do you mean?
Kick them out.
You tell them you no longer have privileges here?
I just say, I've got control of the schedule. We're not going to schedule any more cases for you. Okay. And it's not a reportable incident to the NPDB. I mean, I'll just say, see ya. It's not working out. And I don't take the privileges away. I just, when they call and say Dr. X wants to put on a carpal tunnel, I say, sorry.
No time available. Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
I think this is absolutely wonderful that you've been able to make this work. I'm assuming you must have a large enough uninsured population, or self-insured population as I prefer to call them, to be able to make this work. I know in my area the hospitals are lobbying to get all those people on Medicaid. So what is your uninsured population in the area? Do you know?
It's huge. Oklahoma, I think, is second only to Mississippi.
Well, you're fortunate, because I don't see how something like this could work.
But see how funny that is that you're saying that. We're fortunate to have so many uninsured. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The other thing that's interesting is that self-insured companies use Blue Cross, for instance, as their third-party administrator. The third-party administrator is recommending that these patients in these companies go to these big hospitals. Well, it turns out that probably is going to wind up to be actionable, because the third-party administrator is not acting in the best interest of the big self-insured company. And ultimately, that recommendation and that decision to eliminate my facility from any network consideration whatsoever is costing that company money. So the insurance companies they're culpable. They've got a real problem for their complicitous and incestual relationship with these giant, unholy hospitals.
Oh, that's beautiful. The other comment I'd make is that you mentioned that the surgeons would take their Medicaid and Medicare population elsewhere to other hospitals. I find that absolutely unbelievable that they'd actually do that. They must really love working there if they're willing to go different directions just based on payer. How do you get them to do that?
From the start, the first day, Dr. Lontine, I started the facility and I said, as a condition, no Medicare or Medicaid patients will cross this door. Never, ever. And on that condition, I agree to run it for you. And it's never been violated, ever.
And they want to come there in spite of all of this. In other words, they'll do a case there or two, and then they have to go somewhere else to do their other cases.
They hate going anywhere else.
And one more comment that I'd make.
I'll tell you, surgeon puts on, ear, nose, and throat surgeon puts on 12 cases. He gets 2 rooms, 2 crews, 2 anesthesiologists. He's out of there, starts at 6:30 in the morning. He's gone at 9:30. I've created half a day out of nothing for him. And they're just left scratching their heads, not knowing what to do with the time. They know how long it would have taken at one of the big hospitals. So they love to come there. They're sick that they have to go anywhere else.
That's phenomenal. I'll just mention in Dayton, Ohio, where I'm from, I was one of the first to get involved with a privately run ambulatory surgery center when it became legal to open these. Unfortunately, it was bad management. It just didn't work out. It's a horrible situation. Even though the guy was an anesthesiologist, they would run out of oxygen during a case. I mean, there was a nightmare. But the other institutions all became part hospital owned. And now what we have is we have virtually all of the other ambulatory surgery centers now being amalgamated back into the hospitals, so they're now completely owned by the hospitals. All of these ambulatory surgery centers, except for just one, which is one other, which is pretty well run. But it's pathetic to see that the hospitals have gone after this market and tried to close it up and keep physicians out of it.
It's a move based on fear. The big hospitals hate competitors. They are as bad as the post office. They hate competition, and they can't stand to have anybody compete with them.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Twyla Braze. I'm president of Citizens Council on Healthcare in Minnesota, and really happy to have heard your presentation.
Thank you.
It's very hopeful. I think that's what we're left with when we look at what's happening in today's world. I have one major question for you, but just sort of in response to what you have said, I want to say that in Minnesota, a regulation says that all doctors must accept 20% of their revenue from Medicaid, or they cannot get access to any of the state employees, which includes all the public school teachers and their families. So you get an idea of how much control there is there. And then we had Democrats arguing for free market when the Republicans brought the moratorium on standing centers.
That's the same thing in Oklahoma.
Okay, because the hospitals now you can't create one without being connected to a hospital. And so I have 2 questions. One, are those end of the year payments the DSH payments? Disproportionate hospital share payments? Is that what those are?
That's part of it, yes.
Okay. And then the second question is, when you decide what kind of material you're going to put in the knees and the joints and everywhere else, how do you decide, and how do you pick the pricing?
The patient decides.
Okay, so you give them a whole roster of, here's the bells and whistles for this one, or that one's more?
I mean, shouldn't the consumer decide what's going to go in their knee or hip?
I am completely in agreement. Thank you very much.
And if they want the ceramic joint and they want the latest and greatest, then it's this much, but it's their call. Yes.
I'm Dr. Carol Brown, and I practice psychiatry on the Big Island of Hawaii. And I've been involved with Goliath over there, who's HMSA. They're a licensee of Blue Cross Blue Shield that have set rates for physicians that are just so absorbently low that when you try to take those along with Medicare and Medicaid, you just can't survive. So I've gone up against them, and I've recently lost, but that's okay. I've been at least out there speaking up for what's right, and I've been trying to work on the private practice of medicine and fee-for-service, collecting up front. I'm interested in your surgical center. I thank you for all the good work that you've done. You're certainly exemplary here for the APS. I believe if we all join together at APS, there's a way that we can get patients to pay for this care in a way that would allow them to do it across the nation, across borders, and it would be extremely effective, and we'd totally do away with third-party payers. I may be discussing that some this afternoon at our meeting. What I'd like to find out from you is, how do you charge your services for having this surgical center? Because you've obviously got building costs and upkeep costs and all that. So how do you charge your doctors who are participating in that center? How do they pay you for doing what you do, your part of it? And then how do they collect for their services? How do they charge? How do they set their fees? And how do they collect? Are they collecting by cash, credit card, money orders? Are they doing super bills for their patients? What are they doing? What's this mechanism? I'm more interested in some of the details. I'd like to find out a little bit more. If you could explain that, please.
Well, I don't pay the surgeons, I mean, I don't charge them anything for using the facility.
How do you, so you don't charge them anything, so how do
No,
you maintain?
charge the patient.
Excuse me, sir?
I charge the patient.
You charge the patient for all the services. Okay, so you charge the patient, not the doctor, and then the doctor just puts in their bill for their services. Is that correct?
He charges the patient for his services. The center charges the patient for its services, and as an anesthesiologist, I charge them for my service.
And then the doctors, do they do the same rates for their services that they would do if they were doing it in a hospital setting?
No.
That's what I thought. They didn't. And so they're doing private practice basically there, so they have a different rate at your facility than they do
Yes.
at a hospital
and
facility.
they get a cut rate because it's easy. Here it is. And
That's
we're done.
exactly right.
And we're done. And you don't have
Now,
all the
who's
expense.
paying the doctor? The patient is paying the doctor directly?
Mm-hmm.
And you're charging the patient. So the patient is actually getting 2 bills, or is there 1 bill?
They would get 3 bills. They
3
would
bills.
get an anesthesia bill, a surgeon's bill, and a facility bill. However, in many cases now, particularly with the Canadian patients, they will pay us one fee, and they will pay it to the surgery center, and then the surgery center spins it off to the other players.
Gotcha. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks. Okay.
Thank you very much, Keith.